Girl returns from death with a horrifying message from Jesus. It happened in an instant. One moment, Emma was gripping the wheel, humming along to the low murmur of the radio, her headlights cutting through the quiet darkness of the empty road. The next, everything shattered. A pair of blinding lights appeared out of nowhere. A deafening crash. A force so powerful it ripped her from reality itself. Silence. Her body lay crumpled in the wreckage, motionless. The shattered windshield glistened under the flickering glow of a dying street lamp. The faint sound of metal groaning filled the night air. Somewhere in the distance, the echo of sirens grew closer. But Emma, she wasn't there anymore. She felt weightless, cold. A strange numbness wrapped around her like an invisible shroud. It wasn't pain, it was something else. Something deeper. Something final. A sinking dread crept into her mind as she realized she could no longer feel her heartbeat. No longer hear the shallow gasp of breath. No longer move. But she was moving. Slowly, she felt herself rising. The wreckage below became smaller, the flashing red and blue lights nothing more than distant specks. She could see it all, the twisted remains of her car, the paramedics working frantically to revive her, the growing crowd of horrified onlookers. Her body was still there, but she was not. A force stronger than anything she had ever known pulled her higher. The world as she knew it faded, dissolving into nothingness. And then, she saw it. A tunnel. It stretched endlessly before her, shimmering with an ethereal glow. It wasn't just light, it was something more, something alive. It pulsed with warmth, inviting, calling her forward. She felt no fear, no hesitation, only an overwhelming sense of peace. The kind of peace that stripped away all earthly worries, all pain, all doubt. She moved toward it effortlessly, as if she had been here before, as if she belonged here. But something else stirred beneath that peace. A presence, vast, ancient, watching, waiting. Then, it spoke. Emma. Her name vibrated through her very soul, resonating with a power beyond comprehension. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a greeting. It was a call, a summons. A wave of warmth washed over her as she drifted closer. The tunnel began to shift, the light morphing into something else, something more structured, more real. She wasn't floating anymore. She was walking, but not with feet, not with legs. It was as if her very essence had taken form, moving forward by sheer will. Then, just ahead, the light intensified, growing brighter, denser, until it was no longer just light. It was a presence. A figure emerged, tall, radiant, blinding. She couldn't see his face, yet she knew. Her soul trembled. Jesus stood before her. The figure stood motionless, yet his presence filled everything. The light surrounding him wasn't just bright, it was alive. It pulsed with a warmth so overwhelming it brought Emma to her knees, though she had no body, no weight. She wasn't sure how she was kneeling, only that she had no strength to stand. Time didn't exist here, yet every second stretched into infinity. She wanted to speak, to ask where she was, to ask if this was the end. But before she could form a thought, the voice returned. Emma. It wasn't sound in the way she knew it. It echoed through her, vibrating in the deepest part of her being. It was a voice that couldn't be unheard, a voice that commanded existence itself. She lifted her gaze, and though his face was veiled by light, she felt his eyes. They burned with something indescribable, power, sorrow, urgency. You must listen carefully. The peace she had felt upon entering the tunnel wavered. A strange unease crept in, something that didn't belong in this place. something wrong. She wanted to stay in the light, to hold on to the warmth, but already she felt herself being pulled. The tunnel around her began to darken, the edges curling like paper burning at the seams. The golden glow turned cold, dim. She tried to fight it, to resist, but the force dragging her downward was stronger. And then, everything snapped. She wasn't in the tunnel anymore. She was falling, faster and faster, weightless yet completely aware of every terrifying second. The light above her faded, shrinking into a distant speck. The warmth was gone. The presence was gone. She hit the ground without a sound. The world around her was wrong. A heavy, suffocating darkness pressed in from every direction. Shadows shifted unnaturally, whispering just beyond the edge of comprehension. Shapes moved in the distance, but they weren't human. Emma's breath hitched. This wasn't hell. At least, not as she had imagined. There was no fire, no demons with horns or lakes of burning brimstone. But there was suffering. It was woven into the air itself, thick and oppressive. The feeling of hopelessness was more terrifying than any nightmare she had ever had. She could hear voices, low, desperate murmurs in a language she didn't recognize. Some pleaded, some wailed, others laughed. But there was no joy in that laughter, only a hollow, endless madness. Then, the whispers stopped. A sound broke the silence, a mechanical hum, sharp and sterile. Emma turned toward it, and before her, a screen flickered into existence, hovering in the black void. It was like nothing else in this place. Cold, artificial, modern. She stared, unsure if she should move closer. And then, the screen came to life. A flood of images flashed across it, too fast to process. Cities in ruin, people in the streets, fire licking the sides of towering buildings, a world in chaos. Her stomach twisted. She recognized some of the places. New York, Los Angeles, London. But they weren't as they were. They were falling. And then, amidst the destruction, she saw a face. It was clear, sharper than everything else. A man standing in the middle of the storm, caught between the crumbling world behind him and something else ahead. Elon Musk. Emma's breath caught. The image of him lingered longer than the rest, as if the vision wanted her to see him, to understand. He was standing at a crossroads. Two paths stretched before him. One led deeper into the shadows, where the chaos worsened, where unseen forces waited. The other, she couldn't see. It was blurred, indistinct, like the vision didn't want her to know what lay beyond it. Then, for the first time since arriving in this place, Jesus spoke again. A great battle is coming. Emma felt her soul tremble. She could hear something behind her now, something shifting in the darkness. It felt like watching eyes. He is being tested, Jesus said. His voice carried a weight Emma couldn't comprehend, something vast and inevitable. The choice is his to make, but the forces against him are greater than he knows. Emma wanted to ask why him? Why was she being shown this? What did it mean? But before she could, the screen glitched. The image of Musk distorted, splitting into jagged, static lines. A voice crackled through the emptiness. Not Jesus' voice. It was deep, guttural, layered with something unnatural. He is ours. Emma's blood ran cold. The whisper wasn't a voice. It was many voices at once. It slithered through her mind, through the very fabric of this place. And then, just beyond the screen, something moved. The shadows that had been distant were no longer distant. They were closer, watching, waiting, hungry. Emma had never known true fear until this moment. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to see this. A powerful force grabbed her, yanking her backward, away from the screen, away from the whispering shadows. away from the thing that had spoken. The last thing she saw before everything was swallowed by darkness was Elon Musk's flickering face, his expression unreadable, his future undecided. Then, with a force like lightning striking through her soul, she was ripped away. Emma's entire being jolted as she was pulled from the shadows, yanked away with a force so overwhelming it felt like her soul was being torn apart. The darkness around her shattered, dissolving into blinding light, and for a moment, just a moment, she felt nothing but a deep, piercing silence. Then sound came rushing back. She was no longer in the abyss. The cold, suffocating weight of that place was gone. Instead, she found herself suspended in a realm that defied all understanding. The air shimmered like liquid gold, stretching infinitely in every direction. There was no ground beneath her, yet she was standing. No sky above, yet she felt open space. She wasn't alone. The presence was here. She turned, and there he was, unchanged, untouched by the horror she had just escaped. The light around him was brighter than before, nearly unbearable to look at. But something was different now. The sorrow in his gaze had deepened. Jesus had shown her something she was never meant to see, something forbidden. And yet, he had allowed it. Why? Emma wanted to ask. But before the words could form, the voice filled her once more, gentle yet absolute. You have seen the battle. Her mind raced, the vision, the destruction, the crossroads, and Musk, standing in the center of it all. The image of him was burned into her consciousness, clearer than anything else. Jesus continued, He is being pulled in two directions. Forces beyond this world seek to claim him. They whisper in his ear, promising power, fortune, control. Emma felt a shudder ripple through her soul. She had heard those whispers, the sickening, layered voices that slithered through the darkness. But he resists, Jesus said, for now. Emma swallowed hard. Why him? Her voice trembled, but the question demanded an answer. Jesus didn't reply immediately. He turned, and suddenly, the golden space around them shifted. A ripple moved through reality itself, and with it, new images appeared before her, like windows floating in the air. She saw moments from Musk's life, childhood, young adulthood, the creation of his companies, the rise, the fall, the battles fought in silence. Then, she saw something else. Things the world had never seen. Conversations behind closed doors. Encounters with men whose faces were hidden in shadow. Words exchanged that should have never been spoken. Temptations placed before him. Powerful, world-altering temptations. And each time she saw his hesitation, the way his mind fought against the forces that sought to control him. Emma's heart pounded. He had been tested for years, but now the test was reaching its climax. He is a key, Jesus said finally, one who stands between two futures, one where the world falls into darkness, and one where the course is corrected. A pit formed in Emma's stomach. Then, what happens if he chooses wrong? Jesus did not answer, but the silence was enough. The vision around her shifted again. Now, she saw something even more terrifying than before. She saw what the world could become if the wrong forces won. It wasn't just chaos. It was control. Not the kind that came with war, but the kind that came with complete submission. People walking through their lives like puppets, their wills no longer their own. A world where decisions were no longer made by those who lived in it, but by something unseen, something hidden. And then, a moment that sent ice through her very core. Musk, standing among them, his face void of thought, of rebellion, of anything. A man no longer his own. Emma gasped. He wouldn't let this happen. Would he? Jesus spoke, his voice filled with a weight heavier than the stars. Not if he chooses the right path. The words sank in, but before Emma could react, the vision shifted again. This time, the future was different. She saw people breaking free. The chains she hadn't even realized they were wearing shattering. She saw voices rising, questioning, thinking for themselves. She saw leaders emerging not out of control, but out of necessity, to protect something fragile, something powerful. Freedom. And at the center of it all, Musk. But this time, he wasn't alone. A familiar figure stood beside him, one who had faced war, corruption, and betrayal, and still stood tall. Trump. Emma's breath caught. She could see it now, the connection, the reason she had been shown this, the reason why this moment in time was so important. Musk had been balancing between two worlds for too long, but now he was stepping forward, making a choice, choosing a side. Emma didn't know what to say. The weight of it all was too much, the implications too vast. She turned to Jesus, searching his face for some kind of reassurance. "And if he chooses right?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jesus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out, touching her forehead with a single finger. The moment he did, a flood of warmth, of understanding surged through her. And then, she was falling, faster than before. The golden realm dissolved, the light disappeared, and the next thing she knew, she was gasping for breath, eyes snapping open, chest heaving. The sound of beeping machines, the sharp smell of antiseptic, the sterile white ceiling of a hospital room. She was back, but nothing would ever be the same again. Emma's lungs burned as she sucked in a frantic, shuddering breath. A high-pitched beeping rang in her ears. Everything was too bright, too sharp, too real. She was alive. A rush of sensations overwhelmed her at once. The cool weight of a thin hospital blanket, the stiff mattress beneath her back, the sting of an IV needle taped to her wrist, the dry ache in her throat as if she had been screaming for hours. The room spun. She wasn't supposed to be here. She had been somewhere else. The last thing she remembered was falling. No, being pulled back. The golden space, the warnings, his voice, the battle, the choice, the crossroads. Musk. The name exploded in her mind like a gunshot. She bolted upright, heart pounding against her ribs, but a wave of dizziness sent her reeling back against the pillows. A sharp gasp escaped her lips, and almost immediately footsteps rushed toward her. "She's awake! Oh my God, she's awake!" A voice. Familiar. Her mother. Emma blinked, trying to focus. Faces swam into view. Her mother, eyes red-rimmed and filled with tears. A nurse, frantically checking her vitals. A doctor stepping forward, his expression a mixture of shock and relief. "You gave us quite the scare," the doctor said, his voice measured but tense. "You were gone," her mother whispered, gripping Emma's hand as if she were afraid to let go. "Emma, you flatlined. They said you were gone for 6 minutes." 6 minutes. It had felt like eternity. Emma's lips parted, but no words came out. Her mind was still trapped in what she had seen, what she had been shown. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't some near-death hallucination. It had been real. And now she was back. But why? What was she supposed to do with what she knew? The doctor was still speaking, saying something about brain activity and miraculous recoveries, but his voice blurred into the background. Her mother's grip tightened, grounding her. "You're okay," her mother whispered, more to herself than to Emma. "You're okay now." She wasn't, because she had seen the future. And if the wrong choice was made, none of them would be okay. The days that followed felt surreal. Nurses and doctors came in and out, monitoring her vitals, speaking in hushed voices about how remarkable it was that she had survived. Family members visited, showering her with love and prayers. But none of it felt real, because Emma wasn't the same person who had been pulled from that wreckage. The visions haunted her. The weight of them pressed against her chest like an unseen force. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the crossroads, the shadowed path, the future that teetered on the edge of disaster. And Musk. The whispers still echoed in her mind. He is ours. Number not yet. She had to know, had to see. The moment she was discharged, Emma did the first thing she could think of. She reached for her phone, fingers shaking as she typed his name into the search bar. And there it was. Headlines, tweets, breaking news. Musk had made a decision. A single moment, a single choice, had shifted the course of everything. Emma's pulse thundered as she scrolled through the articles. Rumors confirmed, statements made. Elon Musk was aligning with Trump. A chill swept through her. It had begun. The vision, the test, the war she had been shown. She saw the divide forming even now, some celebrating, others raging. The battle wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Emma clenched her phone, her mind spinning. She had been sent back for a reason. She had seen the stakes, the forces working behind the scenes, the whispers seeking to manipulate and control. But now, she knew the truth, and truth could change everything. Her breath steadied. This wasn't over. She had been given a glimpse into what was coming, a chance to prepare, and maybe, just maybe, this time the right choice would be made.